Welcome back. We want to continue our conversation on collaborative problem solving. Andrea, you were doing an awesome job of going through the steps. So do you want to review what we did and let's continue through?
Actually, I first want to say that the book that we've been talking about, which speaks about the whole process and understanding what's getting in the way of our kids' success, is The Explosive Child. Whoops. And it's written by Ross Green. The other partner in the process is Stuart Avalon. They are no longer working together, but they do have websites, thinkkids.com and livesinthebalance.com. You can get a lot more information there, videos and cheat sheets. It's wonderful.
They
So,
also have training sessions on there.
can you talk about that, Joni? I think it's important.
Yeah, they have hour long and then 1 day long and then 2 day long training sessions that take you soup to nuts. Ross Green actually himself takes you soup to nuts through the collaborative problem solving process to talk about how it's done, explain all the different pieces. Then he does demos with different kids. So you can really get an understanding of what it is. And so there are trainings on both of those websites. And there are, I know with Ross Green, he has Facebook page, he has I think it's a YouTube channel where he takes questions from parents. You can call him with your questions and he answers those questions. So there is help available to you, solid help for these challenging behaviors, how to find a different way. Because a lot of times we know we want to do something differently, but we don't have a model for how we want to do it. And this is a model for how to do it differently, respectfully, and coming actually to a different solution and a completely different dynamic in your family, one of collaboration and peacefulness.
Absolutely. Deb, do you just want to recap a little bit about last time and then I could build on that?
Sure. So we talked about the steps of collaborative problem solving. We talked about drilling down and really figuring out what the problem is, and then coming to your child and saying, here's what I'm noticing, using Ross Green's words of what's up, keeping it cool as a cucumber, and really listening and being open to what your child is experiencing. And then coming back and trying to come up with some solutions. And I think that's about where we left off.
Okay, something I just want to say about those steps. Empathy is such an important word here that we have to come to the conversation with a mindset of empathy. Our Ross Green says there's no kid that doesn't want to do well. If he could, he would. But it's our job by drilling down to try to find out what's getting in the way of their success. And when you come to the conversation, I really invite you to just listen to their concern because we have a whole mouthful of things that we want to say, but that's not where we want to start. We want to start with this is our concern, and we want to hear exactly what you have to say because we care and we want to support you. And it's hard being the kid. So I also want to say that when we're trying to get information from them, we want to drill down using open-ended questions. Because when we're using the closed questions, the yes, no questions, we're ending the conversation. So I'm going to invite you to use the what, the how, where, when. Let's stay away from why questions because that often puts the person on defense, like, oh, you're accusing me, you're blaming and shaming me. That's not our intention at all. And many times when we're speaking, if we talk from the I point of view using I statements, we're calming down that emotional piece. So those are just a few steps that when you're having the conversation and drilling down that I would invite for you to look at.
One of the ways I remember, yeah, absolutely. All those things, Andrew, are key. These are key pieces. The two things that are coming up for me are one of the things I remember Ross Green talking about, and Stuart Ablon as well, is when you approach the issue, right? I notice, I notice, key language. I notice that you're not waking up on time. What's up with that? That's what he uses. What's up with that? So it's just stating there's no judgment, there's no evaluation of the behavior. It's purely the fact of, I notice you're not getting up on time and we're getting out of the house late. What's up with that? And that opens it up in a non-judgmental way for the child to say, well, this is the problem. And the drilling down part is a lot of times the problem that's stated isn't really the problem. They're just not there yet. Okay, what else? Okay, I hear you. Yeah, that sounds hard. Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there anything else? Right? Till you really get down to like flesh out like what the challenges are here. Right? And being able to withstand, sometimes it comes off in a way that's accusatory. The child is not necessarily delivering it. And so as the adult, really staying calm. We talked a little about last time how Deb had this amazing, like she did not take it's your fault personally. She just stayed focused on, okay, what's her goal here? I'm trying to listen. And so the second thing that comes up for me is like, how do I listen so calmly? Like, how do I do that? I have the ideas in my head about what I think is happening here. So noticing them for ourselves, our own self-regulation, listening without trying to teach a lesson, listening without thinking about how I'm going to answer what they're saying to me, because that's not really listening. That's thinking about how I'm going to answer, but it's not actually listening. And believing them. Super important to believe them that this is their experience. It may not be your experience of what's happening, but believing that it is their experience. Because that's the only way to move forward, is to trust them, because then you're creating a safe space for them to go deeper and share with you and know that it's safe, right? So believing their experience of whatever it is and knowing that it may be very different from yours. These are some of the pieces to how to listen deeply and non-judgmentally and create that safe space.
And with active listening, I think it's very important that we're mirroring back to them what we're hearing to make sure that we've got it correct. We can reframe. And also validating. When you validate their feelings, you're not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing. So I think that's important. And when we're having the conversation, we want to be brief, and we don't want them to think that we're here to have an argument. We're certainly not. It's not a debate. We're here because we love you. We have empathy. We want to try to understand what's going on for you. And I need to share my concern. And we can then go over to how are we going to solve this problem to get a win-win solution. We want to sit on the same side of the couch. We want to be on the same side. We're not here to fight. And when we're brainstorming, I think it's really
Andrew, can you
important.
take a step back for 1 second? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I think it's important to recognize that your child may not know how to have this conversation. And you might have to say, you know what? I see you're getting worked up. Let's take a break and come back. And that's okay, because what you're modeling is that we're not getting worked up. This conversation is going to be in a safe, calm space when we're both ready for it. And I'm so sorry if I picked a time that wasn't good for you. You come to me when you're ready.
That's a question to ask. That's a really important question to ask. I want to have this conversation about this thing. Are you open to having that now? And that's another piece of getting their buy-in. Yeah, I am, or no, I'm not. Okay. When do you think we could talk about this? Well, what would be good for you?
And I think that's important to kind of nail them down to a time. So it's not in 6 weeks from now. We need to pick a time that we believe is going to work for both of us, right?
Yeah, it's part of respectful parenting. I have like a really clear memory of when my son's like, I don't want to talk about this right now. I'm like, well, I really do. I need to talk about this now. And he's like, Mom, I can't hear this now. I'm like, all right, you don't have to say anything, but I need to talk. And I did, and we had an explosion because he was telling me, I can't do this right now. I'm not in a place to do it. And I barreled my way through, and it was a mess. So being respectful of where they are, because the goal is for them to be able to participate in the conversation. So we have to make sure first that they actually can. And it's an important piece.
And I think as parents, as teachers, we kind of know their witching hours. So we spoke the last time about, are they tired? Are they hungry? Did they get enough sleep? So really just kind of assess where they're at. And you can ask, is it a good time to talk? And if not, when would be a better time? Because this is something that we really need to address. And I love, Deb, what you taught us last time about the PBJ voice. Do you just want to say a word about that? I thought it was great.
Yeah, just keeping completely calm. If your kid asks you for peanut butter and jelly, you're not going to get worked up about it. Sure, you can have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. It should be the same tone as if they asked you for peanut butter and jelly, as opposed to cream cheese.
Love that. So when we get to the brainstorming stage, I often tell my clients to have a piece of paper so you could jot down some of these ideas. Even with the silliest ideas, there's information for us. So unfortunately, we have to stop now. I'm looking, boundaries are so important and setting limits is really important. So our time limit is certainly up now. And we will continue this conversation. We'll build on the brainstorming and take you through the rest of the process. So we will see you next time, and thanks for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Hello and welcome to our little coffee chat. I'm Andrea Elrome, parent coach and also co-chair of the Bergen County CHAD Board. And I'm happy to be here today and share some information on collaborative problem solving.
I'm Deborah Goldstein. I'm an ADHD coach, teacher, and also a member of CHAD of Bergen County's board.
Hi, I'm Joni Korn. I'm an ADHD coach, parent coach, and positive psychology coach, and also a member of Chad Bergen County's board. Happy to be here and share with you guys.
Today, we're going to be speaking about collaborative problem solving. And I just wanted to recommend, if you're interested in learning more about the process, I recommend very highly that you buy the book, The Explosive Child. And this was written by Ross Greene. And they're on his website and also on Stuart Ablon's website. They both have a ton of information about this process. One is thinkkids.com and one is livesinthebalance.com. But to get started, often when we get into arguments with our kids, whether it's in the classroom or as parents, we often take this authoritative approach, and it's coming from the top down. This is what you're going to do. This is the expectation, and I expect that you're going to meet it. However, when we work collaboratively, we're able to get buy-in from the child, and we're able to solve problems together for win-win, doable, and durable solutions. So that's an
Just want to
introduction.
throw in
Sure.
that sometimes as parents and even as teachers and adults, we view kids as little people that need to be controlled. But they are little people with their own thoughts, their own minds. You know, when teachers say, well, I called the mother and nothing changed. Well, that's because the kid didn't want anything to change. So nothing was going to change. And this is a process where we get the buy-in and we show respect to the child so that they meet our expectations. And that in itself is what's so powerful about this approach. So I was thinking maybe we can just go through the steps of how it works, and then I have a really great story to share.
I
Can I
actually, go ahead, Joni, please.
I just want to jump in somewhat if you're looking for the steps. Along those lines, Deb, absolutely huge point. Like they're little people. They're just like us. How would we want to be treated? if I had a problem, how would I want to be treated? How would I want the person that I need to help me? How would I want them to talk to me? How would I want them to help me? How would I feel open to receiving the help? Right? So really, it's a useful tool, I think, I find to put myself in the other, in as if it's happening to me, what would I want? And in that process, that respectful process of bringing the child in to solve the problem or the challenge that has to do with them. They're actually the one that has to do the thing that you're deciding needs to happen, right? Where you don't have to do it. They actually have to do it. So, really understanding when we're talking to the child, like, what are their concerns? What are the challenges? Because I found often as a parent, I was solving for a problem that actually didn't exist. Like, I saw a behavior and I decided, oh, these are the reasons for the behavior. And then when I actually talked to my child, the reason I thought wasn't even on the list of the things that were challenging him. So I'm solving for a problem that actually didn't even exist. But in bringing our child into the conversation, making them an essential part of the conversation, they're the one that has all the information. We need to get curious about their experience. So then we can collaborate on a solution that addresses their concerns and our concerns. So I just want to add that piece.
Absolutely. And I think it's so important that we're really, really listening, not just with the intention of saying what we want to say, but really getting underneath and finding out what their perspective is and how the experience is real for them. So we begin by sharing our concern. This is what I'm noticing, and I'm wondering what's going on. And Ross Green likes to use the word "what's up." So I'm noticing the behavior, and perhaps you can give me more information. So we're inviting our kids to go ahead, Deb, you want to say
I just
something?
want to take a step back and I just want to make it clear, because I think this is really important, that before you approach the child, you need to be really clear about what the behavior is. And sometimes that might include talking it out with someone, um, or, really thinking it through and digging down to find out not just what the behavior is, but what's the root issue. And what's really going to make a difference for you if it changes, because we can only work on one thing at a time. And so we need to pick that one thing carefully.
And
And
what is it about that behavior that's a problem for you as the adult? Like, what are you worried about? Or is it actually about the behavior, or now we thinking about catastrophizing about the future with that behavior? Like, what exactly is the concern for us and as the adult? What's the worry? What's happening? Because some of that stuff is ours to own and deal with, and some of it is for the conversation with the child. But it's not all. Right? So like you said, Deb, really have to get clear about what is the behavior, what's the issue, why is it a problem, and how do I communicate what my concerns are? Because that's a piece of this collaborative problem solving, the child's concerns, our concerns. Okay, how do we collaborate on a potential solution that we're going to try?
Right. So I think that it's important to be able, like Deb said, to come to the conversation really knowing what the concern is. And it's important that we are able to describe what we're seeing. And then we're going to break down our concern, what might really be going on. And that's exactly what Joni just said. We're going to look for patterns of behavior, because really, when we start to put on that detective hat, we're going to notice that we're seeing this over and over again. We also want to be able to manage our anxiety through this. So just be really, really clear about what it is you want to say. And like Deb said, perhaps you want to talk it out with somebody else. And then again, we're listening. And then we come to the conversation with, this is my concern. I want to hear yours. What is your lived experience? And then we could start drilling down. So maybe we can role play a little bit. Would you guys like to role play what a conversation might sound like at these beginning stages?
sure, or I can share my story, either one.
Go ahead. This is a
Cool.
great time. Go ahead.
Yeah, so one of my kids was making me crazy every single day. And mean, I called Andrea and said, help, you need to coach this child. And she said, sure. And then it didn't happen. And I literally reached a breaking point one day and I sat down and I said, I need to figure this out. And I spoke to one of our other great coaches and she helped me drill down exactly what was going on. And there were things that were bothering me throughout the day, but our day was setting off on a bad tone because she would not get out of bed. And then we were all late every day. And I knew without fail, without a doubt, my issue is that she was not going to bed on time. But when I sat down with her and I said, you're not waking up on time. What's going on? She said to me, well, you don't let me have an alarm clock and you don't wake me up in time. And I said, well, what does in time mean for you? And she said, we have to be, just for reference, we have to be in the car. I tell my kids they have to be ready to go in the car at 5 to 8 and in the car at 8 o'clock. So well, I wanted to have an alarm clock, but you didn't let me have it because it was waking everybody else up. So I said, well, what time do you want your alarm set for? She said 6:45. I said, that's too early because that's when I wake up and I can't have everybody else up until I'm ready to start my day. So I need a few more minutes than that. She said, well, how about 7? I said, sure. I wake everyone up around 7. So 7 o'clock is a great time for your alarm clock to go off. And we set an alarm and she didn't wake up from it. So I was like, okay, we're going to have to go back and redo this conversation, right? But no, because her alarm clock woke up the other kids who woke her up. And she started being up on time, day in and day out. And it changed everything because we set a plan, we tried it. I went in confident it wasn't going to work. And maybe it wasn't going to work. And that's why the next step of this process is so important. And that is having a follow-up. And even when things are going well, following up and making sure you have time for tweaks. Because you might need tweaks. And it might be a month of tweaks till you really get there.
I just want to say, Deb, I'm loving the way that you're explaining this. And I think when we come into the conversation calm and showing empathy, that's a key point here. So we don't want to come into the conversation angry and dysregulated ourselves, right? We want to
Or
have
combative.
I heard a great line this week. There's a psychologist, Debbie Fox, and she did a training for the parents of my kids' school. And she said, when you talk to your kids, you have to be peanut butter and jelly. If your kid said to you, Ma, I want a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, or I want a cream cheese sandwich, you're going to say, okay, here's the peanut butter and jelly. That's the tone of voice you have to have when you have these conversations.
Love that.
We need to talk about everything as if it's peanut butter and jelly on a piece of bread.
Yeah.
And with
Absolutely.
that, I'm going to say that we are going to have to continue this another time because we are out of time yet again.
Can I say one thing though, even though we're out of time?
Sure.
Okay, I want to say two things actually. One, I tell parents, say the thing as if it's the first time you've ever said it, even though it may be the 100th time you've ever said it.
I like that.
Because sometimes it is to them the first time because their working memory isn't so strong. They might not even remember it, right? So that tone of voice, that peanut butter and jelly. And the second thing is that I noticed, Deb, when you had that conversation with your daughter, when she said, this is your fault, you didn't get triggered and say, are you kidding me? You not getting up is my fault, right? And then you're off to the races and an explosion, not solving anything. You didn't. You stayed calm and you stayed focused on what's our goal here. Okay, empathy. Okay, how can I help you? What can work? So that was amazing. That was huge. Really important piece because they trigger us. So staying calm, focusing on.
And that's why if you have someone else that you can bring into this conversation, it's always good to have another person there because if you can't talk, that's when they can pick it up. If you're not going to be that peanut butter and jelly voice, let the other person pick up the conversation.
Love that. I love the peanut butter and jelly. I just want to say, because we really have run out of time, and next week we will talk a lot more about the other steps of collaborative problem solving. We're just, we are just touching the
Touching the
surface.
surface.
we're touching the surface right now. So the book that we are talking about is The Explosive Child by Ross Greene. And again, they were partners, Stuart Avalon. So they both are doing primarily the same things. So Think Kids, Lives in the Balance are their websites, and you can get a lot more information there. But we really welcome you to come back so that we can talk more about collaborative problem solving and having a collaborative conversation. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Hello, ladies. It's so good to be together.
Great to
Um,
see you guys.
let's just introduce ourselves for fun. I'm Deborah Goldstein. I'm an ADHD coach and a member of Bergen County CHAD's board, and also a teacher. I've taught every grade almost from first through 10th. And that's what I bring. Who's next?
I'll go next. I'm Joni Korn. I'm an ADHD coach, a parent coach, and a positive psychology coach. I'm also on the board of Bergen County CHAD, and super excited to talk to you guys.
I am Andrea Elrome. I am an ADHD parent coach. I'm also a co-chair of the Bergen County CHAD board, and I'm an ADDer myself, and I've raised several. So we're here to talk about experiences, and hopefully you'll take a lot away.
Awesome. So what are we starting with?
I think we should start with executive functions because that's really the core of ADHD. So I know that there are so many, and I'm just wondering maybe we could just popcorn and we could talk about maybe we'll start with what's at the core. And we know that self-regulation and emotional regulation is something that really touches on all the different executive functions. So I'm wondering, I know we have a lot of strategies, but does anybody want to talk to just this, what is self-regulation and what is emotional regulation?
Yeah, sure. So when we're talking self-regulation and even more emotional regulation, it's the ability to be aware of yourself and your emotions and your reactions to other people, right? So we want to be able to make sure that no matter what's going on around us or happening to us, our reactions stay in the realm of normal, right? If something horrific happens, it makes sense to have a very high response, a very emotional response, a very strong response. But if you misplace your homework, that response shouldn't be on that same level as hearing that something tragic happened, right? And sometimes for our ADDers, they don't seem to know the difference. And they go into a fight, flight, freeze response when it doesn't make sense. What am I missing?
No, I think that's great. I think as the adult, either the parent or the caregiver or the teacher, remembering that using our own self-regulation that we're asking our kids to use, right? Remembering that even though their response doesn't make sense to us, it makes sense to their nervous system. Like it makes sense to them. So showing up as the adult with that understanding helps us show up with more compassion, helps us show up more regulated ourselves, right? This does make sense to their system. I need to get curious and figure out what is the thing that's poking their nervous system and causing this reaction from them.
And that's something, Joni, you and I have spoken about before. It's not that our kids are trying to give us a hard time, but they're having a hard time. And it's our job to be detectives and to kind of get curious and understand what's getting in the way. So if they're in the candy store, I'm sorry, if they're at the checkout counter at a supermarket and they're melting down because they want the candy there, it's I believe it's our responsibility to be able to hold firm to our boundaries and to understand that when we keep giving in over and over and over again to their demands, saying, when I melt down, I'm going to get what I want to get. I think it's how we show up for our kids that's super important. And like what you said, when we are in control, we are showing them exactly what we're expecting from them. So we're lowering that heat in the moment. Um, and I think it's really important to look for those triggers of self-regulation because many times our kids are so impulsive and they don't have that self-awareness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm
And
curious, sorry, Joni, if we're talking to teachers now, what can they do in a class full of 25, 30 kids when they have that one kid and they see out of the corner of their eye that they're starting to go off the rails?
well, one or two of the things that Ross Green talks about are this. One is he's saying the first time it happens, it's a surprise. Every other time after that, it's a pattern and it's predictable. So, as teachers, looking for those predictable things that keep coming up. It's not a surprise. And the second thing he says is, he says a lot of things, but another thing he says is that um, by the time we see that behavior in the child, we're late to the game. We're late. They're already in dysregulation. And then it's just a matter of riding it out and trying to calm them down again, right? But in order to start to affect learning the skills of self-regulation, right? And practicing the child identifying what's happening in them before they get to that point, we got to get to the game earlier. We got to start noticing and getting curious and seeing the pattern at the beginning of the pattern, not at stage 9 of the pattern where they're about to go to 10 or even stage 8, right? Get in there earlier. By the time we see the behavior or the beginnings of behavior, we're late. So what can we do differently earlier for that child? Whether it's noticing their, I can speak like, well, different kids, right? Their skin tone can start to change. They have physiological changes in their body. They may start to get more frenetic. They may start asking more questions. Teacher, 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 right? These are all signs for that particular child. So we may have 30 kids in our classroom, but we need to know how each of those 30 kids functions, learns, because our job is to educate each of them, right? How do they learn? How do they access the receptivity to learning? What's happening for them? And start learning this as the teacher so we can get in there earlier. So when we see Bobby's color drain out of his face and we know, okay, that is actually the beginning of his dysregulation. Bobby, do me a favor, take this to the principal and ask them to sign this and bring it back to me, right? Whatever it is for that child, like really starting to learn that child, but putting some things in place, pre-planning them, not having to fly by the seat of your pants for the teacher, like, uh-oh, what do I do now? But really pre-planning some things for that child to start to bring down their nervous system earlier in the process of it starting to get dysregulated. And
So,
does it mean doing something different in the classroom? And is it going to mean effort? Is it going to mean change? It's going to mean all those things. And it will make the teacher's life easier and better because they'll have less dysregulated behavior. And the only way to get something different is to do something different. We, as the adult, need to do something different.
so I'm going to play devil's advocate for a minute because I know what it's like to be in a classroom with 30 kids and trying to teach and trying to have the next lesson ready and those flashcards and grabbing this resource and grabbing that resource. And you just can't see it all the time. So what tips do you have for me so that I can make this happen? Because what you're saying sounds like a mammoth task.
Well, the question is really, I think, go ahead, Andrea.
No, 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 you can go. Go ahead.
Right. The question is for each individual teacher, right? Like, how do you continue to stay calm as you're managing these multiple tasks and multiple kids, right? It's thinking about it a little bit, like how could you do something a little bit different to get more um, aware of that child, Bobby, and his state of being? Does it happen every day at like 11 o'clock when when transitioning from music to math? Okay, I know it's coming right before right before the transition, I'm going to ask Bobby to take this note. Like planning, noticing the patterns.
I'm wondering, you just said something, and I don't think we mentioned this. You said noticing the patterns. Well, if it's every day between music and math, which happens to be around 11, is Bobby hungry?
Yeah,
Because
yeah,
we all have basic needs, and when those needs aren't met, we're just a drop more edgy. And for a kid with ADHD, that can throw them off the rail. So we need to make sure our students have food, have drinking enough, and have gotten sleep,
absolutely.
and maybe even gotten in enough movement so they can not feel like they're breaking out.
Yeah, I think that that movement piece is huge because that when we move, we're creating that dopamine hit that we need, that we don't have as much as we'd like to have. And I think in addition to exercise breaks and movement breaks, I think it's very important that we recognize that there's the prefrontal cortex, which is controlling our thinking part of the brain, and there's the amygdala, which is that emotional part of the brain. And the two really can't work together. So, which one wins is that reptilian part of the brain, and that thinking part of your brain, which is decision making and problem solving and learning, is super, super hard. So you may want to start sharing as a class. There's a YouTube out there by a very well-known psychologist, Dan Siegel, and he talks about the upstairs and the downstairs brain. And I think if they can understand that those two parts can't exist together really, and the emotions are always going to take over, they have a foundation of where we need to work. And we can give them some strategies and some tools, but I think it's really important to understand what's happening within them.
Agreed. Totally agreed. And when we're asking about what can we do in the classroom then a little bit differently, some ideas pop out to me, right? So things that are calming our kids' nervous systems. And this is true for all the kids, right? Whether they have ADHD, whatever neurodivergency, or they're neurotypical. It's a daily diet throughout the day of nourishing them. So you start the day in the classroom with 1 minute of mindfulness, 1 minute of breathing during the day. So you are setting them up for success and helping with the transition that may be challenging for some from being out on the playground to coming in to start and sit down and focus yourself. You come in from the classroom, you do another minute, I mean, not the classroom, you come in from recess at lunchtime, help with that transition, calm everybody's nervous system. You do a minute of mindfulness. It's a minute of time, right? And you're teaching kids how to use their breath when they're not in the classroom, when they do get dysregulated, when they're out in the world, you're teaching them this skill of mindfulness. Another thing, we talked about movement, incorporating movement for all the kids, not singling out one kid. Bobby's got to move. Okay, Bobby, right? Like that's important to have because Bobby needs a little bit more, but incorporating movement into the classroom, little 3-minute games or something in the middle to transition between from English to math. And because those transitions are an executive function and they're hard for some kids, right? Um, so those are the things, the diet and protein, right? Implement a snack day at a certain point where you see the kids start to not just go off the rails, but even just you see the movement start to get bigger, right? The energy starts to grow. We all feel it, right? Oh, here comes the energy. Like this is the time of day it happens. Okay, notice that pattern and throw in movement there or throw in a snack break there, a protein snack break. So these are some of the things that we can change in the structure of our classroom to support the daily diet of nourishing all of the nervous systems, as well as our own. Eat some protein also. Get up and move with them.
I just want to say that as an ADDer, I am very aware of time because I know many times ADDers just have this time blindness, but that's something I've worked on so hard. I'm noticing that we're past the 10-minute mark, and I just would like people to come back because we will have a lot more tips, tools, and strategies to share. But I just want to say thank you for attending today. And I'm really hoping that you're taking something away, something that you can implement, whether as a parent or as a teacher in the classroom. And we look forward to seeing you next time.
You remember to say that.
Welcome back to our informal conversation on ADHD and challenging behaviors. Today, we're going to continue talking about collaborative problem solving, the work of Ross Green and also Stuart Ablon. We have taped 2 or 3 other sessions on the process, and today we want to really talk about the meat and potatoes of it. Before we get started, just a quick introduction. My name is Andrea Rome. I'm a parent coach, and I have ADHD. I've raised 3 kids with ADHD, and I'm really glad to be here to share my experience with you.
I can go next. Hi, I'm Joni Korn. I'm an ADHD coach, a parent coach, a positive psychology coach. I also have ADHD. I have a 24-year-old with ADHD, and here to share what we've learned along the way and to just to give you some tools to make things just a little bit easier and make things make sense a little bit more.
And I'm Deborah Goldstein. I am an ADHD coach who works with kids and parents and teachers as a teacher coach. And I also have a gaggle of kids with and without ADHD. And I'm excited to continue this conversation. I think Joni had some background to share from Ross Green on what makes collaborative problem solving effective. That might be a great place to start. And then we can quickly recap what we've done and move forward.
Good idea.
Yep, absolutely. So why do we talk about collaborative problem solving? Like, why do we focus on it as something, a different approach? What's different about it? So I'm going to tell you a couple things that are different about it. It's a more compassionate, productive, effective approach to understanding and helping kids with concerning behaviors. It's an evidence-based, trauma-informed, neurodiversity affirming approach for understanding and helping kids with concerning behaviors. The approach is different from other approaches in some really important ways. And here are the 3 really important ways. First, it helps caregivers focus far less on the child's concerning behavior and modifying that behavior, and far more on the problems that are causing that behavior and solving those problems. Second, the problem solving is collaborative, not unilateral, which means that the child is an integral part, an indispensable part of the problem solving process, which makes a lot of sense since they're the ones that have to actually do the things that we're asking them to do. And third, the problem is proactive, not reactive. We are problem solving before we have the meltdown. These differences have major implications for whether adults are preventing a crisis or merely managing a crisis. So it's a very different approach.
Something I just wanted to add on is that we spoke about the fact that the kids are not trying to give us a hard time, but they're having a hard time. So we're not focusing so much on the behaviors per se, but understanding what's behind the behaviors. And usually it's the executive functions that need to be supported. And how do we go about doing that for them? So I know, Deb, you wanted to recap a little bit about what we spoke about last time. So why don't you go ahead and do that?
So we talked about before starting, as the adults digging down to find out the issue. We spoke about we need to share our concern with our children, but first getting permission from them to have this conversation and when would work to have that conversation. We spoke about talking in peanut butter and jelly tones, staying completely neutral, as if your child asked you for a peanut butter and jelly sandwich versus a cream cheese sandwich. Staying completely neutral on that. We want to share our concerns. We want to use what, how, when, not why questions when asking them about their experience. We want to use I statements in sharing our feelings, saying things like, I notice, asking them what's up, being empathetic, having no judgment, and then really digging deep with them. What else? Is there anything else you can share? And asking that a few times to really get to the meat and potatoes of what's bugging them. Stay calm. That goes back to our peanut butter and jelly. Notice your emotions and self-regulate them as the adult in the room to maintain that calm environment. And then believe what your child says as their experience. We want to mirror, reframe, validate what they're sharing, and we want to be brief. We want to be on the same side. We want to give them space to regulate. If you see they're getting worked up, give them the space to calm down or take a break. And then brainstorm with your child is where we're going to pick up with. And Andrea had recommended last time to have a paper to jot down the ideas that you come up with.
Yeah, I also want to say that I keep hearing the words of compassion, empathy, calm. Remember that our kids are always watching us. We are their role model. We're their greatest teacher. So we really have to take our own temperature and see that we're calm before even having this conversation. Also, we want to come to the table without shame, without blame, without criticism, but we want to come really with a listening mind, to be an active listener, to really hear what they're trying to tell us. And we also have to learn how to use open-ended questions to drill down and find out exactly what they're saying and check for understanding. So we might want to say, this is what I'm hearing. Have I got this correct? I want to understand more. Can you tell me more about this? So that's something I just wanted to offer, and really just coming from a place of support and tolerance. So I think the next thing that we want to talk about.
I'm sorry for cutting in. I just want to remind any of our viewers that we are not licensed to teach this program.
Mhm.
And this is the work of Ross Green and Stuart Ablon, but we're just sharing ideas, and you can then go to their websites and read their books and learn more. And they have great trainings that you actually can become certified in this process.
Absolutely. And the information that I was sharing just now comes directly from Ross Green's website, Lives in the Balance. So you can go there. They're not my words, they're his. And you can go there and you can see it and read it and go deeper with it.
And Stuart Ablon's website is Think Kids. Great, great information. We highly recommend it.
Yeah. I just want to jump in for one sec to add on to what you said, Andrea, about showing up and how we are showing up for our kids in order to handle those moments, right? And the step before that is, like, how do I not see red when these things happen? I can't just say, okay, this time I'm going to be calm. It's not going to happen, right? We need to actually do something differently for ourselves. And it doesn't have to be something so huge. It can be, I'm going to take 3 deep breaths before I walk in the room and have this conversation. Or I feel my blood starting to boil. I'm going to take 3 deep breaths so I can show up how I want to show up. So we need to do something different for ourselves in order to be able to show up the way they need us to and the way that we want to, the way that we always imagined we would, right? So it starts here, and it's how we show up, and it's how we listen. And there is that pivotal piece. What do I do for me? 3 deep breaths can make all the difference in the world.
Thank
So
you.
after we've listened to their concern, they have heard our concern. Deb, what would you recommend is the next part?
I think we need to reframe and restate so that we can make sure we're covering everything and we haven't left anything out.
Mhm.
Again, giving them the space to reflect and empathize, and then restate your main concern. And adjusting what you had originally said based on what they've said. So reframing, restating the concern, and now you can start with brainstorming and asking your child for ideas of how to solve the concern at hand.
One other thing I would add is to validate them. And validating is not necessarily agreeing or disagreeing. It's allowing them to know that they're being heard. Okay, so what would brainstorming look like?
Here's the issue. What do you think we can do to solve the issue? and
Mhm.
writing down every word that comes out of their mouth. And I like to look at it like volleyball. Your child says one idea, you give another idea. They give one idea, you give one idea. So that you're forming ideas based off of each other. And you can really pull together those thoughts on a comprehensive list. And unfortunately, our time is up for today, but we're going to circle around and finish this process next time. So thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate all feedback. You can share in the video comments any feedback, put in ideas for us to talk about of things you want to hear about. And we look forward to connecting with you again next week.
Stay calm.
You start, Andrea.
Welcome back to our informal conversation. I'm Andrea L. Rome, co-chair of the Chad Bergen County chapter, and I have ADHD. I have 3 kids with ADHD, and I am an ADHD parent coach and also a teacher trainer. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm Joni Korn. I'm an ADHD coach. I am a positive psychology coach and a parent coach. I facilitate parent support groups for Bergen County Chad. Welcome. So glad you're here.
I'm Deborah Goldstein, a mom to many. I'm a teacher coach. I'm an ADHD coach. I work with kids, parents, families, and teachers to help our kids be the best they can be. And we are continuing our conversation on collaborative problem solving today, just giving you an idea of how it works and what it's like. I'm just going to quickly recap the steps that we've covered so far. So we've covered coming up with the challenge and deciding what we want to talk about. What's our concern? We've invited our child into this conversation in a collaborative way. We've listened to their perspective, given them the chance to say what's bothering them and asking them over and over again, what's the issue? What else are you concerned about? And now we've come back and we've shared our core concern, rephrased based on what they've shared. And now we're working on finding a shared solution. We're working together with them, writing down every idea they give us, in essence, validating their perspective and sharing our ideas and accepting their ideas.
We're looking for win-win, doable, durable solutions. And it's really important to hear what the other person's saying. Even if it sounds so ridiculously silly, there's something in each one of those brainstorms that we need to be looking at. So we need to become detectives and get curious. And together we're looking to sit on the same side of the couch and to come up with something that's going to work for both of us.
A foundation of problem solving is to understand where the other person is coming from. You don't have to agree with them, right? But understanding where your kid's coming from and giving the child the opportunity to understand where we're coming from is the foundation that we can build collaboration from.
So I'm thinking about using a real life situation about a mom's concern over her child not getting the homework done in time. So I'm wondering, would you guys be willing to do a little bit of the brainstorming back and forth, a little bit of the conversation? Deb, do you want to be the mom? Joni, you could be the child, and perhaps we could do a little brainstorming?
Sure.
Yay.
Go for it.
Okay. So, Joni, we just decided together that we need to come up with a solution for the fact that homework is stretching out all night. And we decided that we really need it done by 7 p.m.
That's impossible. There's just too much work.
Okay. But we're going to try, right? We're going to do our best and we need a plan. So, what
Okay.
are some of the things that you think might work? And I'm going to write down all of our ideas so that we can look over this list and come up with it together. So, what's something that you think might work?
I don't know. There's so much work to do, and I don't understand half of it. So I don't know. Maybe if I didn't have to do it all.
Okay, that's a great thought. I'm going to write that down. What might be a good time for you to start your homework?
Well, I come home at 3 and I just need to relax because school is so stressful. And I want to talk to some of my friends and then we have dinner. So I don't really see myself starting before 6.
Okay. So getting it done by 7, if you start at 6, what are some of the things that might help you be able to accomplish that? Or as much of it as you can?
I don't know. I'm trying. I'm trying to do it. It's not like I'm not trying to do it. But the same thing happens night after night. And then you get mad at me and I get mad at myself and it just feels hopeless. And then I don't even want to do it at all.
Have you tried? No, I'm going to just give you an idea and we're going to write it down and then you're going to come up with another idea, okay? Maybe we need to start homework earlier with more breaks.
Well, what would that look like?
We can figure that out later. Right now, we're just going to come up with as many ideas as we can.
Okay. Breaks would be good. I mean, it's just I get worn out and then I just am wasting my time anyway and just getting more frustrated. It's even harder to understand and focus. So breaks sound good.
What else might help you?
It would help if like you or dad were sitting with me because, if I have a question, then it just stumps me and then I can't go any further. And then I just want to pull out my phone and go on my phone because I'm so frustrated. So maybe if there was somebody there to help me get through the stuck parts so I can move on or explain like one piece so I can move on.
That's really helpful information. Thanks for sharing that. What about having a quiet technology-free room to do your homework?
That sounds horrible to me. I want to be able to, if I need a break, I want to be able to pick up my phone or if I want to know somebody texts me, if a friend texts me so I can answer. I don't want to be totally out of the loop with my friends for an hour or two. Like that feels horrible to me.
Okay, well, I'm going to write that down, even though you don't like it right now, just as part of our brainstorming session.
So just for the fact that we have limited time here, I'm wondering if we can just skip to the end of the conversation now. You've both, started this brainstorming process. You've written everything down. Make sure that it's realistic and clear and actionable. And then we're going to start to write our agreement. So we need to list what is the plan. How will we know that it's working? What is our role as the parent? When would be a good time to check up and see that the plan is even working? Because it's okay to tweak to make sure that it's, productive and that the kids are benefiting from it. And then we need to also talk about what if it's not working? When would be a good time to sit down and revise the agreement?
Can I just take a step back? Because I think we skipped a really important part.
Go for it.
I think that the plan and coming up with the plan needs to be handed over to our children. And what I mean by that is turning to your child and saying, let's look at this list. What do you want to try first?
Mhm.
And giving them that power and that validation to know that we trust them to make choices. And say, we're going to try this for a week. If it's not achieving our goals, we might reconsider and choose something else from this list. And I'm going to hold on to this brainstorming list so we have our choices. But letting them make the first choice puts them in the driver's seat of this process.
Absolutely, but we also don't want to turn everything over to our kids because we want them to know it's a joint process. It's not like we're giving them the magic wand and they're in control of everything. So we have to
But
keep
the first choice should be theirs.
absolutely.
Absolutely.
And
Right.
then, and what I've said to children many times is, if your idea doesn't work, maybe we'll try my idea next week. Or maybe we'll try a different one of your ideas that I think might work better.
And I also think along those lines of letting them choose the first idea, even if we think there is no way that's going to work, as the parent, like that is not going to work. It's okay. That's how they learn. Let them try something they think is going to work and learn whether it is or isn't going to work and how they can tweak it, you know?
I just want to say, because I'm looking at the clock, we only have less than a minute left. This takes practice, and we're going to make mistakes along the way. Progress, not perfection. And when things are not working, I would go back to your original concern and I would start to really take it apart as to, are we addressing the right thing? Are we addressing the right problems? Are we addressing the different executive function skills? Are we giving them the right strategies, the right supports? And again, feel free to go back and change things up. It's okay. It's a process.
Well,
And
absolutely. The biggest part of the plan is not the plan, it's making the plan, figuring out what the challenges are. That's the biggest part of this process. What are the challenges we're addressing here? What's getting in the way? And that's where things really need to be fleshed out between you and your child in order to have a plan that might work.
yeah, and I think in closing, it's important to recognize that we have to support the things that the kids are doing well. So let's celebrate those successes, right? And keep looking for those small wins.
And
And
I think we'll pick up with that in our next conversation when we talk about creating that agreement and setting up those accountability conversations.
sounds like a plan.
See you next time.
Welcome back to our informal coffee talk. My name is Andrea Rome. I am co-chair of the Chad Bergen County chapter. I have ADHD myself. I have 3 kids with ADHD. I am an ADHD parent coach, and I work with teachers so that we can better support our kids in the classroom. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Joni Korn. I'm an ADHD coach, a parent coach, and a positive psychology coach. I run parents support groups for parents of kids with ADHD. I work with parents, I work with teachers, I work with individuals with ADHD, and so glad you're here sharing this time with us.
I'm Deborah Goldstein. I am a mom of a bunch of kids with and without ADHD. I am a ADHD coach who works with families and kids, and I'm a teacher coach. So I have that unique perspective of being able to work with teachers as well. And I am excited to finish off collaborative problem solving today. What we've discussed is we've gone through the steps of collaborative problem solving. We've shared different ideas from Ross Green and Stuart Avalon, from Lives in the Balance and Think Kids, both great websites with great resources. And we're sharing their ideas with you, but we are not trainers. So in order to get fully trained, you need to approach one of those organizations to get that information. And we've gone through the steps of collaborative problem solving. We've spoken about the importance of being level with your child and maintaining emotions, and we've gone through brainstorming, and now we're up to coming up with a plan and allowing our child to take the lead in the first step of the plan, which is, what am I going to try first? And then we need to sit down with them and have a conversation and say, and it's all part of the bigger conversation, but this is the next piece, and say, okay, so what's the plan? What's it going to look like? How do you all think it should play out? And you can give your 2 cents as long as you're open to their responses. And I think that's the key piece. The key piece is staying open the entire time we're doing this process and really listening to what they have to say and implementing it, because they know themselves best. And we're going to go through and we're going to talk and we're going to figure out how this plan is going to play out. So, when are you going to take breaks? Going back to our previous conversation, right? What are those breaks going to look like? and coming up with as clear as a plan as possible. And then setting possible rewards or consequences for this plan to support your child in this. And setting a time, no matter whether it's working or it's not working, where you're going to connect again. So that when you come back to talk again, it's not as this is not working, we need to refigure this out. But this is a planned opportunity to reassess. And even if it's working perfectly for you, it might not be working for your child. And they might want to tweak something. So this is a set time planned in advance where we are going to come together again and reevaluate and change things up. And I just want to throw out there, especially for our kids with ADHD, I like to use the word resparkleize, because where a system might work great for a week, by a week and a half or 2 weeks, it's old. And now it loses its sparkle. We lose our motivation for it. And so even when things are going great, sometimes it's a good idea to proactively change things up.
And I
That-
also wanted to say that it's very, very important that we're writing things down. So there's no he said, she said, there's no miscommunication, because we can always just pull out that clear agreement and say, look, this is what we both agreed upon. I actually like for both parties to actually sign their name at the end of the agreement. We want to be specific about the roles of each person and define how the plan is working for us. So we're going to set a time to check back in with one another and say, what's going on for you? What is your experience? What's my experience? What's working? What's not? And what are the things that we need to tweak in this agreement? So very important that you're hearing both sides. I like to say God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. Let's listen, listen, listen to what they're saying and hold back a little bit about what we always want to say. Hear them, hear your child.
And that's so powerful. I like that reminder of 2 ears and 1 mouth. And if we only speak half as much as we hear, we're giving our child the pedestal to express themselves.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it's also important to remember that we're going for progress, not perfection. And we're seeing what's working and doing more of what's working. If something isn't, then we're tweaking it without shame and blame or anything else. Like, what's working here, celebrating what's working, what can we do differently? And remembering we're not going for perfection in 2 weeks, right? This is going to be, we got this down. Progress. Where are we making it? Let's celebrate it.
And I want to
Yeah.
add
Go ahead.
just a perspective on this whole process. Not only are you solving a problem that's challenging your whole being sometimes, and your whole family life, and your child's life, you're teaching your child and you're modeling such powerful problem-solving skills that they will now have for life. So even though it takes time, and yes, you have to make time for yourselves, and you have to take the time to implement and to check back in, the skills are invaluable.
Absolutely. And the process itself, from start to finish, grows connection between you and your child. Everything about this process is about listening and validating and hearing and working together. And that's growing connection. And when we grow connection with our kids, we can solve any problems with them. And they can come to us. And we're setting things up for the future when they have bigger problems, bigger kids, bigger problems. In doing this collaborative problem solving, we are creating the foundation of connection for them to come to us when they need help. We're making it safe. And so that we're keeping them safe.
Right. And I think it's important to keep a few words in mind. And something that comes up for me is calm. We need to stay calm through this process because we are modeling for them showing up with a regulated mind so that we're able to think and follow through the process. Because when we're dysregulated, that amygdala gets hijacked and no thinking can happen. and there's not going to be any clear plan. So please remember to stay calm, stay regulated, and think about the tools that you have in order to show up as a calm parent. What
And
comes up
that's
for
a
you guys?
topic for another conversation.
Exactly. Are there
How to
any
stay
words
calm.
are there any words that come up for you guys during that stand out about the process? Empathy, tolerance, anything?
I have a different take.
Go ahead.
Um, my take is really the connection piece.
Great. That's what Joni just said.
Like that is, and the other word that comes to mind is it's such a blessing to have this tool
Mm.
because it allows so much progress. And I find and maybe, I should be using it more and people should be using it more, but I find that it's usually the tool we pull out when everyone's heads are butting. And it takes it from crash to walking alongside each other. And that makes such a difference.
Absolutely. There's something I just want to read a short little thing from Lives in the Balance website where Ross Green says the shift here is focusing on problems, not on behaviors, and that's huge. It's working collaboratively and not unilaterally. That's huge. It's solving problems proactively rather than in the heat of the moment. That's huge. And that last bit of solving things proactively helps caregivers and teachers start preventing crisis rather than managing crisis. So, I'm reading from his website here. These are his words. So many popular interventions, de-escalating, calming corners, taking a break from the challenging task, using blocking pads, restraining, secluding. These are all crisis management tools. If a kid is starting to get escalated, you're already in crisis, right? You're in crisis management mode.
So I just want to say, Joni, we have just about 20 seconds left. Can you
Okay.
wrap it up with the
Yeah. The end of this is crisis prevention does not begin with de-escalation. It begins with identifying and solving, begins with connection and identifying and solving problems that are causing the kids to become escalated in the first place.
And on that note, I just want you to remember that anything that you can talk out, you don't have to act out. We don't want to keep putting our hand up that bat. We don't want battles. We want that love, connection, and calmness. And on that note, we have to say goodbye for today, and we look forward to seeing you next time.
Don't
Thanks for
forget,
joining.
you can follow us on YouTube. You can leave comments on YouTube. And if there's anything you want to hear about, leave it for us there as well. Till next time.
Bye.